Hi, friends. My hair is looking wild. Okay, we're going to start this video with one of my older pre-recorded videos. If you know, you know. Um, it's about red pill versus blue pill debate. However, when I originally made it, the feedback that I got back on it was like, for people that haven't taken philosophy or anything, it was like hard to follow and it needed pacing. Um, but we're gonna watch it one time fully through, and if you get it, you get it. But we're also going to go back and then kind of break it up and really go over what that really means. It's one of the reasons I find debates between Democrats, Republicans, actually, like a lot of YouTube debates fall under this actually, um, because they're coming to the debate with two separate frameworks, two separate goals. And the problem with that is that you end up not actually getting your points across. Okay. The reason that Another reason why it might be hard to follow is because to some people, the blue pill side or Democratic side, if you will, um, fighting for like a high moral superiority, it's like, really? Them? Yes. I know that you would think somebody like a traditionalist is doing that, but it's really the Democratic side. Um, they're more so, they have a tendency to be debating based on what everybody in the group is going to think of it. And it's like, why would you do that? So why do you want, how do they think they win when they walk away from a debate? I don't know. Okay. Trying to find the middle. And with the whole, I know Jubilee is going to be doing a debate on this. If you really want to master your opponent and you're a Democrat, you're a blue pillar, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't even matter. You have to operate under a red pillar's framework. Otherwise, you will look stupid. You just will. Okay. And what do red pillars or even Christians, what do they do when they go to a debate? They know how to literally pin you down on morals, because although you're trying to ascend to the top with morality, you have the flimsiest framework, and that's okay. It's okay to have a flimsy framework, but that's how they keep destroying you. You have to know that. So how do you destroy them back? With facts. But you never come with facts. And if you do, it more often than not can be refuted because you didn't actually do the research on it. You didn't actually look at, okay, what's the other side saying about it? It does require some work on your part. Not a lot. And it becomes easier over time, but it's just like, it's like they're sweeping you on the floor. So, if you are, I guess we'll kind of go over like both sides, but more specifically, I'm going to show Democrats how they can strengthen their arguments and stuff. We're also going to watch a debate between Anna Kasparian and Ben Shapiro after the first video, but I know she has recently become independent, but she will be our Democrat in this example because it's a debate that's stuck in the back of my mind since I watched it semi recently. It's about a year old, and it just really depicts this dilemma. So let's start with the first video. Again, it might be hard to follow if you've never been in philosophy or even debates of any kind. Just know that it's going to start off by talking about Republicans or red pill, if you will. And then once they're in the hospital, it'll say blue pill people generally bring the following assumptions to a debate. And that's when we're talking about blue pillars, Democrats, whatever you want to call them. So give me one moment. Possible. So embarrassing. I don't think
blue pill people end up talking past each other because they cannot even agree on what debate is and what the goals of a debate are. The sets of values they hold are completely disjointed. Red pill people generally bring the following assumptions to a debate. 1. They believe that there is exactly one reality and that the truth is what accurately describes that reality. The better a statement describes reality, the more true it is. They are factual, absolutists.
Hello! Make some noise for some facts!
They believe whether something is good or bad is a matter of opinion, and that all systems of morality are things society invented to get a result, and it's therefore pointless to argue about whether something is evil or not, instead about what effect it has. They are moral relativists. They believe that the goal of a debate is to establish what the facts are and how this knowledge can be used to control outcomes. They argue about what is true. They believe that debates are a cooperative process between two or more people who have the shared goal of achieving a more accurate picture of absolute reality, and that while people may stick vehemently to their positions, they can also reverse them on a dime if new information comes to light, because the only real attachment is to the truth. They believe debates occur between theories, not people. Thus, questioning someone's moral character is off limits because it is irrelevant. Blue pill.
Okay, now we're going to like the Democrat side. This is what Democrats typically bring. I know it's blue pill, but okay, I know the beginning's a lot.
People generally bring the following assumptions to a debate. 1. They believe that reality is subjective, and what is true is simply a matter of who you ask. What is called truth is simply a codification of someone's perspective, and it's therefore pointless to argue about what is true. They are factual relativists. They believe that there is exactly one set of moral laws which human beings have gradually discovered in a historical climb towards ethical perfection. Certain people are ethically better or worse based on not only what they do, but also on what they believe. They believe that different ethical systems exist, but they can be ranked from ethically worst to ethically best, based on a sort of meta-ethics whereby they can be tested for a degree of compliance with the one absolute set of ethics that underlies reality. They are moral absolutists. They believe that the goal of a debate is to establish what is morally better and what everyone should do. They argue about what is right. They believe that debates are a competitive process between two people who each have the goal of establishing their views about right and wrong by attaining a state of moral ascendancy over the other person. They believe that anyone who changes their views is revealing a flaw in their moral character and must thereafter relinquish the moral high ground and submit their actions to the moral judgment of others, usually the person who won the debate. They believe debates occur between people, not ideas, for the precise purpose of establishing who should be allowed to set standards for the behavior of others, since they're morally superior. Thus, questioning someone's character is not only relevant, it's the whole point. This is why blue pill adherents think those red pill guys are misogynists or bad people. Because they cannot imagine an analysis that does not occur for the purpose of judgment, much less one that doesn't include any idea about what people should do. This is why red pill insists that blue pill are willfully blind, because to them, anyone who doesn't admit the truth must be unable to perceive it. They cannot imagine anyone not caring what the truth is. This is why blue pillars keep thinking that red pillars are trying to restore the Dark Ages. They cannot imagine any group with shared views not having one moral agenda that they wish everybody to abide by.
Okay. So, what the hell does all of that mean? Well, for starters, oh my God, this tooth. Sorry, my mouth is going to be moving and Strange ways. Okay. So what does that mean? What the fuck does that mean? Well, for starters, when somebody is like a liberal, Democrat, progressive, whatever you want to call it for the sake of this video, they're typically going into a debate and debating what is there at that moment, whether it's about their character, whether it's about the person at essentially, they're going into a debate to see who has a more moral character. And so somebody who's a liberal, Democrat, if you will, they're going to see Republicans is not caring about a bunch of people. When they talk about certain issues like trans issues, it's like they are vehemently against it. And this is just generalizations that I'm making for the sake of this video. So they're already holding themselves in a position of moral support, moral superiority. Okay. So if I'm a Republican and I want to absolutely demolish the other side, I'm going to find that flaw in their moral character. However, that's like the most immature and lame way to do things. But that's assuming that a Republican is like, they know their opponent and they just want to absolutely demolish them. However, typically when it's good faith, this is why this word fucking bothers me. People are going in to debate the ideas and not the people. And something that, and if anybody from like a liberal perspective was like, wait, we have to criticize ideas and not the person. I wonder why. It's like it doesn't compute to them that good faith is facts. Okay. So if you're not going to put the demons on somebody, great. We're off to a great start. This is why when I talk about debates, it's very important that you define the proposition. I like this brush. I think we're going to use it. Define the proposition, okay? You have to define the proposition because just like in the video, it's truth is subjective. It's subjective. You got one side that believes this is truth, and you have another side that says, but so is mine. Okay? So anytime you talk about truth in absolutes is not going to compute. It's just not. So instead, you have to acknowledge if you want to get anywhere. This is why cognitive dissonance is so prevalent. It's because typically one side is so defensive about their moral character. Okay. You both have moral frameworks that have holes in them. Write that down. Write that down. Okay. If you want to have a debate on morals, that's great. All you have to do is just find them slipping up at some point. That's all you have to do. But since we're better, okay, we're going in good faith, your words, you have to bring the facts. So when you define the proposition, red pillars are misogynist. Okay. If you agree with the proposition, lefties, okay, you're in the affirmative, right? So, what are your 3 arguments to support why red pillars are in fact misogynists? Argument 1. They want to repeal the 19th, women's right to vote. Number 2. What else? Number 2. They want women to stay in the home. Okay, they want to take women out of the workforce, whatever. Number 3. They believe the only thing women are good for is babies. Okay, those are your 3 arguments. If you know that you're going in a debate, if you know you're going into a debate with somebody that does not agree with the proposition, what are going to be their top arguments? This exercise is so necessary. Okay, a red pillar is going to say, if we really wanted to take, or no, sorry. Red pillars do not believe, I'm sorry, Jesus. Red pillars are not misogynist because number one, what's the best argument for it? What's the best argument? The only people that are saying repeal the 19th is like a very small minority who are Christian. Here are the stats of Christians in the US, right? I don't know. Number two, what was the other thing I said? Repeal the 19th. Women should stay at home. Okay. They only take, okay. You could say something like, if we got rid of the administrative departments, that would be proof that we are misogynist. But because we don't do that, there's more evidence. I don't know. Number three, women should be baby takers. Women should carry babies, whatever it is. A red pillar who does not believe that red pillars are misogynist would say, a lot of people don't have kids. The number of people not having kids in the country, whatever. It's not like they're trying to do whatever. Okay, but what can you anticipate from the affirmative side? They're going to say all those things. You have to find evidence that would refute that, right? So that's the third part. So you could say something like women, Morgan Stanley stats, okay? Women between the ages of are single and childless, see? Whatever it is. But what happens instead? Okay. Ideally, this is what it would look like. But what happens instead? You have one side that is going on to defend what it appears like. Hard to tell. They're defending that their side is better, but they're not bringing proof of it. And this is what bugs me. It's like, bring some proof. You know what they will bring, though? Donald Trump is the next Hitler, something of that. So he stole the election, or something of that sort. What are some other things? I know I've seen shows of red pillars or Republicans. Sorry, I'm going to be using those interchangeably. I'm just listening now because I'm not sure where this started. Sorry, there was a video in the beginning. Men can't talk about their feelings unless they are drunk. Okay. Wait, I have to grab this. Dun, 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 dun. Where is it? Here it is. Can you agree to disagree?
Democrats, stop focusing on scaring people about the scary right-wing candidates and offer them real solutions that you're going to fight for. I think that's the only long-lasting winning.
Let me skip it. I don't want to deal with that. Okay.
Who disagree on shows like this one, for sure.
Well, I think that
I want you to hear that part. Hold on.
Hey, and welcome. This is the Ben Shapiro Show Sunday Special. I'm really excited to welcome to the program Anna Kasparian. Anna, thanks so much for stopping by. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, we have to take on the elephant in the room. You are braving grave danger by coming on a show like this one. So what's prompting you to actually join me on the show? Because it is hard to get people who disagree on shows like this one, for sure.
Well, I think that...
Okay. Why I should... Okay, just for clarification, she is now publicly an independent. This video is a year old. Okay. But she's our Democratic side for now. So Ben Shapiro asks, wow, you know, it's almost impossible to get a Democrat on a debate with a Republican. Is that true? I guess so. A lot of times Democrats are the far end of the spectrum will be like, don't platform certain people because it's in a way justifying their position or whatever. Okay.
It's important to talk to people you disagree with, debate and hash out some of the ideas that we have and the differences we have. I'm not afraid of my political views. I'm not afraid to admit when maybe I got something wrong in the past and maybe I've evolved on my political views. It's just really, really important in a functioning democracy.
Just that part alone, it's like, who are you, a Republican for pointing that out? No, 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 no. No, that's your audience. Because remember, in the beginning video, they're trying to reach a status that has like a moral superiority against other people. So technically, when they have a debate, it's because they want their audience to see them perform this. It's performative, using their language. Okay. Why is she saying that to Ben Shapiro? I don't know. This is that demon thing I talk about often. Putting your demons on me. Okay. That's something you should talk to your peeps about.
To have Americans see one another as fellow Americans as opposed to an identity that needs to be super combative with a different identity. And I think that's what we've kind of turned into. You and I clearly have a lot of disagreements on policy, disagreements on culture, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're an awful person. It doesn't mean that I should be afraid of you. If anything, I should prove that I genuinely believe my political views.
I need to prove that I genuinely believe my political views. Wrong. Wrong. You are debating your audience when you do this. This is pointless. No, 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 no. It's performative. We believe you. What about your side is better than a Republican's? What do we disagree about when it comes to culture? I know this is the very beginning, but it really sets the tone for how this person's coming into this debate. It's like this constant, they're evil, I need to prove to my audience, even though I'm going to pretend it's you, I have to, not pretend, they actually believe this. I need to be careful. I'm going to show you that I genuinely believe. Ben Shapiro's over here just like, I mean, I guess that's logically sound. It's like nobody's questioning whether you genuine. That's you talking to your audience. Your audience are the demons.
By engaging in these debates, if I can defend what I believe with actual facts, statistics, empirical.
Defend what I believe. It seems like that's the right thing to do, right? It seems obvious. And I know I'm going to have issues because I got multiple different sides talking, but it's like so important that we break down. That's not correct. You are coming into this already not correct. This is why Ben Shapiro can beat everybody. You don't have to follow what I say, but you should. You don't have to. You're going to do what you want to do. But if you do things the way I fucking tell you, you can demolish any Republican. But it's like they have this moral superiority, smugness about them. Get rid of it.
Evidence, well, that only proves that there's good reason to believe in the policies that I'm promoting.
So these are what I genuinely believe in. I need to defend them because I genuinely think that they're the right things to do. You failed. I know it might sound crazy to you. You're like, that makes sense to me. Wrong. Wrong. First topic, environmentalism. Okay. Why is the Democratic sides with the policies that you guys want to put in? What about these is better than this way, if anything? Typically, they're more alike than they are different. I know. Try to get rid of all the brain rot and the news shit that's like trying to demonize both sides and like actually get down to policies. Great. Shmishmorshem. Okay. What did Trump do? What happened when Biden was in office? And what's the future look like? Assuming that a Democrat gets in office, and then what's your fear about when Trump's in office? He's going to bring something like, well, he didn't do X, Y, Z. So why do you guys are the ones that want to go based off of past behavior to judge somebody's character. Here's the facts. Okay. If you don't think that those facts are true, because you have people feeding you info saying, no, he's going to do this. No, you have to get down to the facts. If you don't think that that's truth, then tell me how you know what Donald Trump's intent is. You see how this is how you guys eat yourself? Because you can't prove it. Okay? This is why a lot of times I feel like when it comes to people switching sides, when it comes down to looking at the facts, you kind of realize that the news media has been lying to you on like a liberal side of things, that they've been lying to you, because when you look at the facts, they're actually like pretty much the same. And so then it's like, has my side been lying to me, or are the Republicans? Well, if it's a fact and a fact, I guess it's my side. So I'm actually not surprised about the whole switching, but I'm just saying, okay, I'm going to get way too much in the weeds.
And it's easy to be in an echo chamber where everyone already agrees with you, but you're not really being challenged. So I like to be challenged. I like to put my political ideas to the test, and I think this is a good opportunity to do it.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I really like about you as a person. We actually got to know each other when we did a debate about a year ago, I think, over in Pennsylvania, and we were talking in the green room beforehand, and we got along as human beings. And one of the things that's nice about conversations like this is, again, what you say I think is super important, which is that the social fabric of the country is going to be built on the idea that people can have conversations like this, and yet it's considered so unusual and so crazy. Have you gotten any blowback for being willing to do conversations like this one?
I have. I will say, it is a small portion of a very loud group of self-identified leftists on Twitter, for instance. They'll get very...
Her audience is probably like, okay, checked off. She did do what we expect her to say. Just referencing back my video that I covered of Hutch and like Pisco, whatever his name is, Destiny's friend. It's like, she should have said that it was a fringe group. It's like, okay, robots, we got one down. Sorry, it's always
very upset. They'll accuse me of platforming you, even though, I don't know if they notice, you've got a bit of a platform on your own. I don't need to help you in building a platform or platforming you.
It's so smug. She doesn't even know.
I think that there's this very real fear that in engaging in these conversations, you are legitimizing the other side. And my point is, as long as the other side's coming at me with good faith arguments,
there it is.
They genuinely believe what they're saying.
They genuinely believe what they're saying. This is where you guys fail. Stop it with the demons. It's like more often than not, y'all be atheists, but you know the intent. No, you don't. You will never know somebody's intent. And you fail here when you do this. It's like, if I believe, well, guess what? I'm going to show you a million different other ways that they could have behaved. Are they all false? At what point? It's a big pet peeve of mine. I love you. Okay. I love you. I just want you to do well. Okay. I'm coming with love.
Debates is important in actually deciphering what you as the viewer believe, right? Because if you're only listening to one side, if you're listening to leftist media, liberal media, and you don't get the other side at all, your policy ideas are never going to be challenged. You're not going to hear the other side. And I think it's led to this culture right now where Americans overwhelmingly seem to have difficulty with nuance, right? Everything needs to be black and white. And honestly, political issues are usually a lot more complex. a lot more nuanced, and nothing in life is black and white.
And that's what makes them interesting in the first place.
Right.
If it was all that black and white or that easy, you wouldn't have to listen to shows like yours or shows like mine, and you wouldn't have to. I mean, I've always encouraged people to listen to shows that are on the other side of the aisle, because otherwise they don't know what I'm saying that's fact and what I'm saying that's opinion. And so I think it's really important for people to hear conversations between people who really, really disagree. You used a phrase there that I think is really important, good faith. And this is one that I've had to kind of think through myself, because obviously there are conversations that are not worth having. You'll have people.
Don't fall into the fucking brain rot, Ben. Ben has a formal debate background. For those that don't know, he got his degree. Didn't he get his JD? So he knows exactly about argumentation. That's where you learn it more often. So him saying, I had to learn it too, Ben. I did too, because I was like, isn't just showing up good faith? No, they see demons. Okay, they see demons. And the irony is that with love, the irony is that if somebody's behavior ends up being bad in the future at some point, they get to sit back and see, I knew they were bad faith. It's like how a child argues, okay? It's putting them in a position to always have their beliefs reinforced. It's toxic, okay? I'm just pointing it out. Remember, repeat after me. You never know exactly why someone does something. You'll never know. So stop pretending like you can point it out, because it will always bite you in the ass. I say this to my peeps too.
Online who will say, you should go talk to this person. You know, this person happens to be, like dregs of the earth. And then you say, well, I don't really wish to talk to, and they say, well, you say you're willing to talk to pretty much anybody. So how do you draw that line? How do you draw the line between somebody who is worth talking to, somebody who's acting in good faith, and somebody who's not really acting in good faith?
She's going to point out past behavior, like I said before. So I know she knows.
Well, I think the interaction that you and I had both before and during that debate was really important to me, in that it gave me a better idea and sense of who you are. One of the issues I've had in recent years is the the caricatures that are drawn of the other side. And I think the left does it, the right does it. So just kind of like lumping you in with, let's say, Tucker Carlson, lumping you in with.
What the fuck are you talking about? I bet you Ben Shapiro was like, why did you just bring that person up? What are you doing? No. Stop gossiping. Stop thinking that you're making somebody feel better by saying something like that. Did they have beef? I don't think so. Okay. But saying, I don't think you're like X person is not obvious to somebody on the right. Because why are you gossiping on a platform? What are you talking about? It'd be one thing if they were like, you're not like Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay, we have a consensus that a man that eats other men is wrong and bad. But when you say somebody who's on a fucking, what are you talking about, lady? What is that? Another demon? That's stupid. Okay, love you. Stupid.
With, I don't know, someone else that I certainly don't think is coming at these debates from a good faith perspective. They're looking for clicks. They're looking to build their public persona. There's a lot of that going on. You're a pretty respectful person when we're engaging in these debates. I don't really see you trying to draw caricatures of me as we're in the middle of these conversations. So to me, that's important. You can just tell there's like toxicity, and then there are people that you disagree with politically, but you can actually have a respectful conversation with them. And because I had that experience with you, I was comfortable, again, having this experience today in hashing out our differences, but also talking about where there might be some similarities, where we want the country to go, because this country's always had a variety of political ideas, political differences. But there was a time in America where people could engage in these debates, engage in these conversations, and leave feeling that mutual respect for one another.
All debates should be on that last portion that she brought up. That's what debates are about. The shit in the beginning, my beliefs, your beliefs, scratch that shit. Get rid of it. It fucks you up every time. It doesn't make sense.
Seeing each other as fellow Americans as opposed to my enemy, the other side. We need to, crush them. We need to do that. I want to move away from that. And honestly, during the coronavirus pandemic, I've opened my mind up to some programming that I otherwise wouldn't have listened to. So, for instance, there's this show called The John and Ken Show. It airs in LA, but I think it's actually syndicated all over the country. And I like listening to it because there are a lot of perspectives in that show that I disagree with. But there have been moments where one of the hosts will say something that in the short term I might be offended by or angry about or whatever, but I have to do my due diligence. So I'll investigate it a little bit and think to myself, oh, well, actually, he had a point there. So I think
So the only time, if you debate somebody and you're like, she makes sense to me. If you debate somebody and after the fact, they make a video and they discuss the debate and they say something you don't like, and it's in reference to you, it's because you didn't have the right facts. That's it. That's it. So they brought up XYZ, but they didn't seem to land it on XYZ. They're not calling your overall character stupid. They are saying you did not bring the point. Focus on the facts. Okay? And that won't happen.
The necessity for nuclear energy is a good example of that. Once I realized right now the technology for renewables isn't quite where we need it to be, where we can just give up fossil fuels and be okay. Well, a good clean energy solution to kind of close that gap, at least for now, would be nuclear. And you say that, and a lot of people on the left have a negative reaction to it. But I think it's partly because they're not typically exposed to other perspectives. Everyone's kind of in their own ideological bubble. It's a huge problem, in my opinion, and that's why I want to have conversations.
I mean, that's a great example. So I've always used nuclear energy as actually the litmus test on people who take climate change seriously.
A litmus test? Is he bad faith? No. When you have adult conversations, one of the ways you can gauge if somebody's actually going to just, I can't say the word, spark, okay? Or they're going to look stupid. He's saying litmus test, like if you actually come here honest and you can acknowledge the what it actually takes to implement things with like nuclear energy or whatever, then I'm not going to press you on it too much. That's it. It's just like, it's like you want to do these things to see if they actually know what they're talking about in order to avoid making them look stupid. But they'll still say things after, like, how bad faith. You have no idea. Like, it's just, I watch both of y'all.
There are people on both sides who don't, right? There are people on the right who will say that it doesn't exist, that there has been no global warming over the course of the last 100 years, or who say that there is no anthropogenic global warming. It's entirely the fault of the sun. And my perspective has always been, I don't have the expertise to challenge the IPCC when they suggest that there will be a certain amount of climate change. Their sort of outlying, more extreme predictions are the ones that have sort of the least predictability, and they admit that. And so the question becomes, what do we do in order to prevent as much of this as possible while still maintaining a lifestyle that Westerners are used to and that we should aspire to for the rest of the world? And nuclear energy has always been a great way of doing that. And so that perspective has tended to draw fire from both sides. You have people who say, well, why are you even acknowledging that this sort of thing is, that you sound like Greta Thunberg? And then you'll have people on the left saying, well, how he doesn't even believe in global warming because he is advocating for nuclear energy. That sort of failure of nuance, I think, has really deleterious effects because it prevents us from accomplishing solutions that, if you and I can agree on a thing, it's a pretty good notion that that's a fairly commonsensical thing, because we just...
So like the video in the beginning, a lot of issues come up when, and this can go in reverse, just saying, but when, in this specific example, when Republicans bring up an issue or a counter to something and you say no, because you're trying to defend your character and not the facts, we think you can't perceive the truth. Okay? There's always going to be little fundamental parts of truths. And in the reverse, like, okay, am I being too harsh? Okay. In the reverse, when you hear Republicans bring up what's a topic that annoys me that they do? Puberty blockers. They get so hardcore on the, I don't want to castrate children, you know, it goes, and it's like they obviously don't have the background knowledge on it. So even talking about it, what's the point at that point? It's the same thing. So you both have to be able to get down to fundamentals, agree to them. And if there's stuff that you're worried about saying because of your audience's reaction to it, like you're leaving out a group of people specifically for like Democrats specifically, then don't talk about it. Don't talk about, well, they're going to say that we didn't acknowledge. I don't care. It's a lose-lose. Seriously, it's a lose-lose, because if your opponent doesn't know that much and you have to break down even the fundamentals and they're not acknowledged, move the fuck on. It will always be a lose-lose on your side. Okay, I hope that's easier to follow. Sorry. Complicated.
To agree on so many things. And if you can agree on something like nuclear energy,
right,
then really there's not that much to argue about.
And I mean, nuclear energy does not emit the type of climate, emissions, climate-causing emissions that other fossil fuel, oil, natural gas, that definitely does have an impact. It contributes to the climate emergency. So anyone who is against nuclear energy, I think there are some points that are legitimate. So for instance, people are concerned about another Chernobyl. I totally understand that. But the technology has improved since then, better safeguards.
Not run by the communist Russians. Yes.
Yeah. But look, these are conversations that should be had, and we should be fearless in having these conversations. I feel confident in my beliefs and my values, but I also really want to get into basically a culture that leaves ego aside and helps people feel comfortable acknowledging when, hey, maybe I didn't get something right.
You won't be able to. You see, here's the tricky part when it comes to Republicans and Democrats. They are both operating under fear for most issues, at least on YouTube, okay? But the only way that they can get out of that sort of archaic way of thinking on both sides, they have to move to a different developmental stage. The issue is that comes over time. You can't persuade, sometimes you can persuade them out, but more often than not, it comes with age. So what happens? You age out, and then you got the new ones coming in. So it's going to be a constant wrestle, or it's going to appear like it is, if that makes sense. So a better way for both sides is to acknowledge the other person's fears and come up with a solution on how to mend that. The issue is, though, that one side is going to think the other one's lying. We need to remove this idea that you know exactly why somebody did something. Seriously. Okay? It's like I see liberals, I see Democrats, and it's like they get it. They get it when it comes to incorporating everybody. The issue is they don't know how to implement it, and they're trying to implement it in the same way Republicans are trying to implement it, which is archaic for both things. If you really want to get your democratic values into like the new era and get everybody on board, the way you would do it, in my opinion, that is not fully formed yet, has nothing to do with deconstruction or equity. It might feel like that's the right thing, but I don't believe this is the case. So what would be a good thing is using Republicans who are more fact-based. I'm not saying they're right. There's a distinction. But because they're more fact-based, therefore they're looking at things in more of like a linear way, incorporating their strengths and then your strengths, which is including everybody, then we can actually fucking evolve. Okay? It's a little integral theory, a little spiral dynamics. It's like they're yelling at each other and they're both annoying me. Okay? And so what can the Republicans do? You need to be able to you need to be able to take all the individual, all of the intersectionality components and fit it into your framework and be like, okay, that's true. And really do the work, not just like, oh, the children, not true. Okay, no, you go back, you look at the science, you say, this is true. We're going to put a line here, but be so cautious where you put that line, okay? Because we don't want to eliminate anybody. And that sounds way harder. And maybe that's it sounds like not a solution, but I promise you it will be. Like if you've ever seen egalitarianism, there's a reason that I spew some crazy shit sometimes more often. And it's like Tori will be like, fuck men. I love men. I don't actually mean this, right? But then you would think that when a feminist will bring me the patriarchy, deconstructing the patriarchy, you think because I said men annoy me that I would be down with that. I'm not down with it because it's doing that equity thing. It's doing the deconstruction thing, and that's not the solution, in my opinion. There's something else that I think we are all capable of collaborating and getting to the solution, but I know it's not the right way. And it's like, Tori, who the fuck are you? Psychic. Okay, that's who. I'm a witch. I just know. And if these are topics that are uncomfortable for you, if you cannot operate with paradoxes, contradictions, and having two things be true at the same time, this video is probably not for you. Okay, I get it. Politics sucks ass. And this will probably be my first and last video. Probably won't be the last on political debates. But it's like, until I can somehow, I don't know, I'm hoping somebody takes this info, goes into a debate, and somebody has a light bulb moment, and then boom, we evolve. Okay, that's the goal. It's a big goal. It's a big fucking goal.
Because there are certainly areas where, turns out, I didn't get something right. You know, I used to be 100% against nuclear. I thought nuclear would be super dangerous. You know, I totally bought into like the Chernobyl related.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but once you start reading into it a little more, once you actually start thinking for yourself independently, independent of some ideological model that you're supposed to fit into perfectly, it really does open your horizons and it allows for you to learn. And that's what I want to do. I want to learn and I want to make sure that the information I'm getting to my audience is well thought out and accurate.
So, you know, I think what's really interesting about that is that it seems like there are two values that you're centering in on, and they're working in tandem, which are really good. One is that you're actually pursuing things that you think are true. You're trying to get to the truth, which means listening to other perspectives, just from a sort of classically liberal position. And then on the other hand, you're also suggesting that this builds social fabric. And so the point that I've made is that the future of the country, in terms of sort of a national polity, because what we're seeing right now is a giant sort, right? We're seeing people like me move to Florida, away from California. You're still in California. We'll talk about that in a second. You're seeing people in New York get more New York, and people in California get more California, and Florida get more Florida. It's getting redder. And so the social fabric at the national level seems to be fraying a lot. And so one of the things that I've said is that the future of the country is going to rely on people who disagree with me, but agree that we should be having the conversation.
Right.
Not siding with people who they may agree with in terms of the political end goal, but foreclose the conversation. Because that way, the social fabric phrase, you get to where you want to go, maybe, but you lose half the country in the process.
I mean, you might lose half the country in the short term, right? But I think media is incredibly powerful. And look, I think it's also important to differentiate between what you and I are doing and what I see happening on other, let's say, right-wing shows, right? I see a lot of right-wing hosts bring on individuals who purport to be on the left, and then all they do is come on the show and trash the left while simultaneously agree with whatever the right-wing host is saying, right? It's a form of propaganda that I think is persuading some amount of leftists to immediately panic if they see someone on the left go on a right-wing show. So I'm sure that they'll see this conversation, they'll automatically assume, oh, Anna's just there to
welcome to the Republican Party, Anna.
Right, to reinforce what Ben is saying. But you and I have serious differences. You know, we've debated economic issues. Everyone can go back and watch that debate that we had at the Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce. But at the same time, I think there is a difference between the endlessly, I don't want to say sometimes violent, yes. Like, we just need to bring the temperature down for a second and acknowledge that the majority of the country isn't on the extreme right or the extreme left. The conversation is dominated on social media, especially by the extreme right and the extreme left. We need to bring the temperature down and actually represent what the majority of Americans are concerned about.
That's one way to look at it. But I see it like those are our people on both extremes. What is a better way that we can put them both at ease? What's a way that we can put them both at ease? It's not, oh, it's just a small portion. No, they matter. Everybody matters. So what can we do to bring them both together? It's like you would have to have conversations, and both people need to really put themselves in the other person's perspective. And that might sound easy, but it's very difficult until you can actually walk away from a debate and really put yourself in the other person's shoes. And if that's how they see the world, what can we do to accommodate that? It's not an obvious answer, but you can then begin to understand where their fear comes from and how you will make sure that that's not going to be exploited, if you will, in the future. But we're looking at things way too, ironically, way too black and white. But both, everything is partially true. I don't know. I'm hoping somebody watches this who's like, I get it, and they solve it. Okay. Everybody's truth is partially the truth. And it's like, well, is there one truth? Oh, no. Eventually. But we're not there yet.
Majority of Americans want the same thing. They want healthy, happy families.
Yeah, for sure.
They want financial stability. How do we get there? And we're never going to answer that question if all we do is pretend like the extreme ends of the spectrum are representative of this country and that we should all hate each other and be super divided.
So in a second, I want to talk to you about the incentive structure for avoiding exactly kind of the thing that we're doing right now. First, it's time to talk about Daily Wire's most trusted privacy.
Hi, Shane. No, Tori, that's logical. So rational is a better word, actually. But yes, there's characteristics of the right sort of realm that, when fused with the left sort of include everybody, when we fuse that together, we'll be able to actually come up with a way that respects everybody's autonomy without bending the truth. And it seems like if the right concedes, they will, and this is generalizations, but it's like, oh, there we go. We're subjective truth, right? That's not what I'm saying at all. We haven't gotten to the point where we can acknowledge what the whole truth is, because nobody has taken the time to actually step into the world where somebody feels this way. Some people might have, and they're like, oh, it's so-and-so's a mental illness. You're not in it deep enough. And unfortunately, a lot of the most contradicting issues that we hear about where we're like, to fix the homeless, we must put them in houses. That's one way to look at it. But until you've been homeless, you know that things don't work that way. Right? So it's coming up, it's understanding everything from every single angle. Valid, valid, valid. It's still got to be valid. So then what? It's not that obvious. But if you're looking at it like, if we agree to that, then aren't we just agreeing to this postmodern? No, 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 no. That's your archaic way of thinking. Okay, there's faults on both sides, but that's archaic to look at it that way. Try not to. And if that doesn't make sense to you yet, go do the work and come back. Love you.
Partner and the premier sponsor of this show, ExpressVPN. Have you ever read the fine print that appears when you start browsing in incognito mode? You know, that's the mode that's supposed to keep you secret. Well, actually, incognito mode means your activity might still be visible to your employer, your school, or your internet service provider. To actually stop people from monitoring your online activity, you need to do the same thing I do, use ExpressVPN. Think about all the times you've used Wi-Fi at a hotel, coffee shop, even a friend's house. Without ExpressVPN, every single site you visit can be logged by the admin of that network. That is still true even when you're in.
Also, I wanted to add, if you're like a Democrat or liberal, progressive, and you see Republicans, if you see them that they like Trump, right? And you immediately think there's something wrong with them, you're archaic too. Okay. For people to all get behind somebody like that doesn't mean we're repeating history with Hitler. That's archaic to think that way. Ask yourself, what is it that he has done that so many people on the right like them? Don't listen to what other people are influencing you about when they talk about Trump. Okay? Just saying. It goes, work on both sides.
Every part of one party, and in your own party, making them the most angry that they could possibly be about the other party, as opposed to, what if we all just sort of pick our best candidates and then let them go at it in the ring?
I mean, I wish that was the actual method and strategy, but you would actually have to have a campaign strategy that offers the voters something to vote on instead of something to vote against. And I think that this has actually been an incredibly dangerous strategy for the Democratic Party, because they might feel super confident that their candidates can beat someone who's on the extreme right. But there have been instances where that wasn't the case. I mean, certainly in 2016, the Democratic National Committee was really propping up Donald Trump under the assumption that there's no way Hillary Clinton would lose to Donald Trump. Well, here we are. I mean, Donald Trump won, clearly. So there's that part of it. I also think when you consider the campaign donations that ordinary people give to the Democratic Party, they were not under the assumption that their hard-earned money was going to go toward far-right candidates in order to, you know, give these Democratic candidates a leg up in their mind. I mean, again, it's very, very risky to do that. I don't think it's a smart strategy at all. For the Democrats, even in the short term, again, it's risky. Okay, sometimes they get it wrong. And if you don't give people something to vote for, meaning if you don't have policy proposals, actual solutions that are appealing to voters, are they going to show up just to vote against the person you've been fear-mongering about? I don't think it's smart at all. Aside from that, I think what you're saying is also correct in that the conversation increasingly becomes dominated by lunatics. And I don't think that's representative of most Americans.
So, I don't like the language, okay? I'm a bitch who is single and childless, and there's something about that language I don't like. So I'm a tone police for a moment. Okay, now that that's over, they still matter. Their perspective still matters, just like your perspective matters. Is there a right way to view the world? Yes. But sometimes people from another side need you to help them. And just like in the reverse, okay, it's like, well, why should I have to help them? You don't, but you should try to look at the world with more compassion. Honestly, I feel like most people are good. I know it doesn't feel like that, but they are. And although people will be like, well, the IQ and blah, 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 when I bring up intelligence, you need to view people with an average level of intelligence, not this, most people are stupid. Stop it with that. Stop it with that. Because that is archaic too. If you look at the IQ, most people are in the middle and have an average intelligence. So, assuming you wouldn't be able to tell their political party, think about your neighbor, think about those people because they matter too. And if somebody's coming with some crazy shit, okay, lunatic in her words, whatever. Are they suffering from a mental illness? Maybe. Okay, what's the most extreme one and what does that affect? Thoughts, behaviors, emotions? Great. You don't have to discount them as being fucking nuts, right? You have to view it more like those are my people. Okay, they're a little confused, but I will take them under my wing. I'm just saying. Okay, who the fuck am I? Mother Teresa. I don't know. It's just like some of the stuff I'm saying sounds so stupid and so spiritual and sounds so hippie. And I get that. Believe me, I get it. There's nothing less I want to sound like. But I feel like if you have that reinforced, it might give you a new perspective so we can evolve. That's the goal.
And there's also this problem of lumping in everyone together in like this neat little box of ideology, right? So I think in the minds of a lot of people on the left, you are the exact same person as Tucker Carlson, right? And I think you're different. I think you're different from Matt Walsh. I think you're different from Candace Owens. You guys are all on the same network. I commend you for having differences of opinion on the same network. And I'm sure it can be uncomfortable at times, but there are nuances and differences.
So, as Sean says, I don't trust anyone with an IQ below 130 to make good decisions, to be honest. I see that. I think that's fair. Most of the people that, well, I have predictions on how shit should be run. It would be a little bit different, but it would involve like multiple people than like one president. I don't know what that's called though. I'm not a political, just saying. But right. So the issue we're having is that we have both very smart and some that are average and then lesser IQ average, whatever, on both sides. You're going to see more people that are trying to put both of these together in order to come out with the best outcome. And they're going to be probably in the top tier levels of like IQ. And there might be somebody that you really like who's like an Einstein, right? And it's like, well, he says something different. People are going to be stuck in these black and white thinking patterns for a while. Man, like at least 5 years. But as long as you ground things with compassion and view it more as one in terms of math, this is what I've gathered so far, okay? I don't know if it's true yet. I think it is, but I don't know. If we think of it like we're all in it together as one, I think we'll be able to solve it. I see it right now with like multiple different types of groups of people, multiple different perspectives laid out in a chart all over the world. And so how can we incorporate all of those charts into one? And it's like, well, you're going to be taking some here. You're going to be taking some here. There is one way to do it. I don't know exactly what that equation is. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I believe it's one.
And I think it's important for people to be cognizant of that because I don't want to be lumped in with someone on the far.
No, Tori, that's communism. No. See, this is the issue. This is the issue. I'm not talking about how to run the economy. I'm not talking about that. But it is, so this fascist, oh, that's socialist, oh, that's communist. That's a very archaic way to look at it on both sides because they both do this thing. Stop looking at it like that. No. Bad thinking. Well, Tori, how do we make sure that people are not going to get into power that shouldn't be in power? Most people are good. Most people are. If Tori says most people are good, most people are good. And it's like, well, Tori, what happens if we get a Hitler? It won't happen. Trust me, bro.
Left, right? I have
like, oh, real
significantly different opinions from them on certain matters. And I think it's important to know what those differences are and not let, again, the extreme ends of the spectrum represent the entire country.
So, one of the things that you mentioned there is the idea that you have to run on something, not run against something. And obviously, negative campaigning is the most effective form of campaigning, despite all of the happy talk about how when you campaign for things, people rally behind you. People who are policy wonks tend to do very poorly in elections. People who are attack dogs tend to do very well in elections because that lizard part of our brain that senses threat is really activated by a perception of threat on the other side.
Well, actually, can I interrupt you on that?
Sure.
Because I agree and disagree. So let's go back to 2016. Because with 2016 several years away, we can now really analyze it for what it was. Donald Trump's campaigning certainly had a significant negative component to it. Negative campaigning was part of what he did. But he also offered, or at least paid lip service to, something that Americans were concerned about, which was bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States, really taking care of workers in our country, maybe reconsidering some of the foreign aid that the federal government shells out. That appealed to his base, so much so.
You talking about collectivism and please archaic makes you sound stupid. It means ancient communism isn't ancient. If you think that sounds stupid, that's on you. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to say whatever I think is going to help people evolve past a certain type of thinking. I love this brush. I don't care what people think sounds stupid. It's irrelevant. When I say that everybody needs to get on the same page, we have one side that believes in truth, hard rules, which are fine. I don't mind the hard rules. And I don't mind the truth either. But rules, a very blue pill way of thinking, if you will, that's on the right. That's on the right. Then you have the other side that is the total opposite. The total opposite. There's one truth and it involves both sides. Solve it. Okay? If you think that you are righteous and this is the right way, you're not looking at it correctly. Love you. Love you. The reason that wars happen are because you're both operating, whoever in a war, off of two archaic ways of thinking. One's more archaic than the next. That's why wars happen. If we can get on the same page, they won't. But one side doesn't trust the other and the other side, stop thinking that way. It's childish.
That even today, they're so loyal to him, regardless of what he does. So he actually did give people something to vote for. Whereas all we got from the Democratic Party during that election was, ooh, Donald Trump's dangerous. Isn't he so dangerous? Oh my God, don't vote for him because if you do, you'd be racist, this, that. It was just nonstop scolding. If that is what your strategy.
Yes, Shane, the truth matters. The truth matters. We're on the same page. They matter. People that are looking, if this is making you think like, oh, we're just trying to adopt the left's mental illness and subjectivity, and it's like, oh, we're not going to acknowledge truth. You're wrong. I actually think this side gets it in terms of the collective aspect, but they're going about it the wrong way. The right gets how to solve solutions, and they get it well. But they're saying no to this side. And the truth is, in my opinion, I could be wrong, is that if anybody's going to evolve it further, it's going to be the right side because of that solution-oriented thinking. But right now, people are focused on what they can do in their own lives and what they can control in their own environment. And that's fine. You can do that, baby. But But I think in order to get the right way, the best truth that you believe is the best truth, you have to incorporate something. But if you're seeing it as like, oh no, we're absolving truth, it's not the right way to look at it. And maybe I don't have the language to communicate that, and I can admit that. That's fine. But if you write off what I say, I'm gonna fuck shit up. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Just don't. It's okay to hold your belief and what I'm saying in another little bubble. It doesn't mean you have to adopt it. Just acknowledge it. Just acknowledge. So I know that you don't actually have to acknowledge, but you can hold both bubbles in your brain. That's uncomfortable for a lot of people, but
I don't think that it's a winning strategy, sometimes in the short term, but certainly not in the long term.
So that does raise the question as to what you think the Democratic Party should run on.
Right.
So the Democratic Party has radically shifted its appeal over the course of the last 15 to 20 years. If you go back to 2004, it was John Edwards running on sort of the Two Americas platform, which sounds a lot like sort of the language that Bernie Sanders uses when he talks about the United States, right? A lot of what he talks about is this sort of class divisions in the United States. It's very much focused on economic redistributionism, focusing on the blue-collar worker. This is obviously the audience that he's attempting to drive out to the polls. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party, if you look at it demographically, seems to have become the party largely of upscale white liberals who went to college and low-income minorities. And that's a very fragile coalition because the truth is that I'm not sure that those people have tons and tons in common. White upscale liberals tend to be very concerned with questions of equity far more than people who are actually low-income minorities, like by polling data. The sort of woke concerns that everybody on the right likes to pick on, that is white upper-crust liberals who are pushing that. That is not minorities who are pushing that sort of stuff. I remember having this conversation with Van Jones, and he was totally agreeing with me. He's like, what are all these white upper-crust liberals doing talking about this sort of stuff? They should be talking about sort of the bread and butter issues. And so you have the white upper-crust liberals pushing that, plus a solid dose of kind of very social leftist policy ranging from abortion to transgenderism to same-sex marriage and those sorts of policies that are not the chief concern of low-income minorities. And it seems like the way that they're getting low-income minorities to sort of resonate to the message is with the threat assessment of the Republican Party. The Republican Party is racist, they don't like you, they hate you, Donald Trump's evil, and all the rest of that. It seems like they dodged the bullet in 2022, but that's a very fragile coalition.
Well, I see this as a problem, honestly, on both sides, campaigning on both sides. I think that increasingly you have both parties completely captured by campaign donations from wealthy donors, corporate donations. I think that's been a problem. That has led to pro-corporate policy by both Democrats and, Republicans have always been in that camp. But now Democrats have been so captured with that money. And then the other thing is, Ben, it's a huge problem that we have members of Congress invested in individual stocks that they are legislating about or legislating on. Because, first of all, there's an insider trading issue there, number one, conflict of interest. And also, they're going to want their stock portfolios to perform well. So are they going to pass the right legislation to protect the consumer, to protect the worker, to protect the average American when they are literally invested in ensuring that those companies do real well because they profit off of that as well. So that is a huge problem. And so what you have now is both sides, in my opinion, campaigning on a bunch of BS, okay? Not actually focusing on what would improve this country for Americans, what would improve this country for the voters. It's just nonstop distractions. Look, this is what we're seeing right now with the investigations.
Yes, you are describing cognitive dissonance. Yes, correct. The issue with cognitive dissonance is that when you hold two beliefs, if you hold two beliefs and you're arguing for one, you're going to fuck up, right? All I'm asking you is to just consider maybe there's truth to what I'm saying. You don't have to adopt it yet. You don't have to implement it. You don't have to enfold it. You don't have to enforce it. Just consider it. I mean well. Okay, but correct.
House, right? The first thing Republicans said was, we're going to do investigations into Hunter Biden. We're going to investigate this. Fine, do the investigations. I don't really care, right? I'm not some loyalist to the Bidens at all, by any means. But the culture war stuff, the investigations, it's really important for Americans to understand none of this stuff at the end of the day is going to improve your life. Okay, so all the distractions, we need to be privy to the fact that they're distractions, and we need to get back to actually hashing out what policies need to pass in order to make sure that Americans are thriving.
So this does raise the question for me of localism versus sort of national policy. So when you point out, for example, that both parties are subject to regulatory cap.
So what's something that, and I keep thinking about this because I want to make a separate video on it, but I think that the left, liberals, progressives, Democrats, if you will, where they struggle greatly is not acknowledging male struggles. And you're like, well, what the fuck? What the fuck? What do you mean? Males are the privileged ones. Until you can get to a place where you can step into the shoes of your average male, then you're not going to be able to solve any of this either. Because you think that the other side is trying to maintain a patriarchy. And that's a faulty way to look at this. It really has a lot to do with empathy. And it's like, it seems so fucking obvious. No, you have to understand when men are complaining about how they're putting in all this work, they're working these jobs and they're getting nothing in return. You're going to view that as the patriarchy entitlement? No, wrong. You need to get to a place where you really feel it. And you really can acknowledge, oh my God, they're not getting anything in return. And they're pretty much in a slavery type way. And that's going to be I probably shouldn't use that word because I don't have the language right now to really verbalize what it is that I see in my brain. That very much could be psychosis. We don't know. Okay. But I really think that something that keeps them closed to evolving or even considering this other side has a lot to do with that deconstruction of feminism and that wanting to eradicate men. No, you don't want to eradicate your people. You have to be able to see what it is they're complaining about, because it's not the entitlement that you think it is. And it bothers me.
Or that they're subject to their own stock portfolio. You know, some people would say, okay, elect better people. We need to, if we just elect people of this party, it'll fix it. If we elect this guy, he's going to fix it. And then there's the sort of Thomas Sowell position, which is it's not a problem of people, it's a problem of incentive structures.
Yes,
the incentive structures in Congress are just broken.
Yep.
And when you have this number of people, 435 people in Congress, who are controlling this amount of money and this amount of regulatory power, that will corrupt, right? I mean, you put that much power at the hands of a very small cadre of people, whether you're talking about in the executive branch, in the regulatory state, whether you're talking about people in the legislative branch, it's innately going to tempt them to enrich themselves and self-serve and self-deal. I mean, this is something that the founders actually were very much focused on, which was the idea the federal government was going to have very little power. And so this does raise the question of how much power you think the federal government ought to have. Because if we're talking about, you know, kind of the solutions that get implemented, I'm a big fan of the idea that California ought to be California and Florida ought to be Florida, and basically that may be the only way that California and Florida can share a nation is if they are allowed to do what they want in their own particular purviews. But we, because of nationalized social media, and because of the amount of power that's in the federal government.
I probably should have added, when I say men are victims, it would be almost instinctual for somebody on the left to be like, yeah, to the patriarchy. No. You're trying to attribute what I'm saying to a system that they themselves started. And that's low-level thinking. Okay? I'm hoping someone solves some shit. Okay?
We focus in on the federal government. That means that we care deeply about what happens on the federal.
I have to really say, like, I'm actually very hopeful for the future. I actually think it's going to be a lot better than what you might think it is. And then it's almost like the total opposite of nihilist. So for anybody that needs a little sprinkle of hope, there it is.
Level every single day. If you went back 200 years, no one cared who the president was because the president didn't have that much power. So what do you think of the idea?
Can you describe the patriarchy? From which worldview? The patriarchy is a system created by men to benefit men. It probably doesn't include benefiting, but a system where you have a man at the top. A man has to be at the top. So from like, when I hear conversations or I read books about feminism, they want to dismantle or deconstruct the patriarchy because they believe if more women were included at the top, it would be this collective thing. It's not that that's wrong, but it's wrong in this society. There's something greater. I just don't know what it is yet. So, but feminism, or like the left way of looking at things, it does have a value to those on the right. It's finding what about it is true. And it seems like what the left is trying to do is say, we need to do it our way and get more of our people, whatever you want to say, to the top so that everybody is this and it's all wrong. Okay. The fact that people are saying no to that it has nothing to do with entitlement. It has nothing to do with men want to be at the top and men want control and blah, blah, blah. You're looking at it wrong. You're looking at it wrong. If you can acknowledge that there's maybe a man, or you can maybe say like a capitalism, sure. I would probably agree with that. But you're still thinking of it top down. And I need you to think. I need you to like adopt the other side and then come back to it. Like, I don't know how to solve it. It feels like I'm trying to solve a transitive equation, but I don't know what letter equals because we don't even know what letter exists. And it's like, well, what the fuck? I know. I can't explain it. I'll try. I'll keep trying. But anyway, so this patriarchy, although I get it and it serves a purpose, the purpose of it has more to do with a binary of gender, if anything, than anything else. But this idea that you view men as taking control, power, and they want to strip women of their everything about that, that's the wrong way to look at it. That's only one way to look at it. You need to acknowledge every type of man there is on the world. Do you think your average man has like this desire to oppress different types of people, women in particular? Do you really think that? If you do, you have demons. We got to rid you of your demons.
Of sort of delegating power back down to the states instead of centralizing back up into a central government that does have the capacity to be used by both sides for corrupt purposes, for example?
It depends. I mean, I think that, it's funny because I've always been super focused on national politics, but over the last several years, I've been a lot more honestly fascinated with what's happening in California. I think for obvious reasons, local politics is fascinating to me. And in terms of what impacts my day-to-day life, I've realized that these local decisions have more of an impact than what's happening on a federal level. There's a lot of gridlock and a lot of nonsense happening on a federal level. So I think that's part of the reason why it's not coming down to impact our lives on a daily basis. I think the federal government should be tasked with important regulations to protect the consumer because greed is a thing, okay? The fiduciary responsibility to shareholders is real. And so how do you balance that with the need to protect workers and consumers? I think you need a federal government and a regulatory body to focus on that. When it comes to civil rights, you need that protection on a federal level. You can't just leave it to the states. You don't want one state to say, nah, we're not into interracial marriage. We're going to ban that. Or we don't want to, have equal rights based on, or equal rights for everyone. Some races we like more than others. You need a federal government to protect civil rights. But I do agree with you that Americans have not been paying enough attention to what's happening on a local level. There are certain things that can be dealt on a local level that doesn't need to be the responsibility of the federal government. And to be quite honest with you, with all the dysfunction and gridlock with the federal government, I think more and more people are relying on a local level to get policy passed that they desperately need.
So in a second, I want to talk to you about local politics versus national, because I think that the national politics does lead to extraordinary polarization, whereas as we'll talk about in a moment, when it comes to local politics, everyone gets a lot more moderate when they're talking about their own particular
That's very
community.
true.
First, the debt ceiling is now above $31.4 trillion. Inflation is still well above 7%. People are getting fired at major companies. All to govern it are just terrible. You have an increase in crime. Homelessness has taken over the streets. And when I was living there, I mean, I've pretty famously talked about this. And it was the kind of place where I had a very nice house in a pretty decent neighborhood.
So yes, I've read this book, and we haven't done a dedicated episode to it. And I understand that this is like, it's like whenever men are trying to be like, we come in peace. We're not trying to fuck everything up to like this side. It's almost as if they're going to view you as whining. They shouldn't. They need to adopt it as another perspective that matters. But the climate right now, it makes sense why they don't take it. They're like, oh, it's one book. Wrong. Shame on you. Okay, it does matter, but I don't know if it's going to persuade the side to really see it. I don't know. There's something about it, because I fear that this leads into they'll just see me as a pick me, right? Which is fine. I could give two shits about how somebody views me. But like solving this issue, it's like they can be collective about everybody but men. But you have to view men not as victims of a patriarchy. That's a really bad way to look at it. Because what do we know about people? They have biases, right? You have a toxic ex. All men are like this. People need to acknowledge their, when they project. Ego, you don't like men's ego, you're projecting too, okay? Men are not the only ones that are operating on this projection or ego thing. I know we like to think it's the male ego. Bad way. Bad juju.
And we had a gate in the front. Mm-hmm. And we would open the gate, and there would be a homeless person face down in the gutter, Edgar Allan Poe style, or there would be a guy outside the house shooting heroin into his foot. And I've got like a 5-year-old. And this sort of stuff has become incredibly common in LA. You noticed it, and you've been getting all sorts of flack for it.
Right, because when there are problems in society, we need solutions. And you can't find solutions unless you acknowledge what the problem is and then properly diagnose it. So my biggest issue right now, at least with the way the left has handled the discussion on homelessness in places like Los Angeles, is there's this housing first mentality where, oh, everything would be fine as long as we put everyone in housing. And by the way, let me just note, housing is an important component to this. There is a housing crisis. There's a lack of inventory. I think we all know that. We do need to build more housing. But
Melanie, are you still watching? Melanie, it's like, okay, this is a good issue. Okay, this is a good issue to understand how multifaceted this issue is. The left is saying we need more houses for a homeless crisis. Okay, for sure. I've been homeless. I know many people have been homeless. I had 2 dogs. I go to a homeless shelter. Sorry, our beds are full. Oh, okay. Whatever. We also, sorry, our beds are full, but we also can't take dogs. The only thing that got me out of homelessness was my dogs. I cared more about them than myself. So with that, if it's like, what if they have pets? Well, you'll have one side that says, well, they should get rid of the dogs. They're obviously homeless. I only fed my dogs. I didn't eat. Careful with that information. And I got out of homelessness. It's not just a housing issue. It's not just a housing issue. There's multiple. People might have dogs. People might not know where they are. Maybe somebody has a mental illness. Maybe somebody doesn't think that they're homeless, right? When you acknowledge there's so many multi parts to an issue, it's not binary. And that's really uncomfortable for a lot of people to think about. I know myself, I'm like, oh God, adopting all these different perspectives. But at some point, it does click. I don't have the answer to it, but even just being empathetic to all the different ways instead of judging them will get us closer. So it's like, I don't know. Did I land that?
At the same time, treating the homeless population as if it's a monolith has been a complete failure. There is a huge mental health crisis happening in this country. So people with severe mental health issues are just left to die on the streets. And in some cases, you know, because they are experiencing an episode, they could carry out some sort of act of violence and assault someone.
Yeah, and that's also possibly why they're on the street as well. Let's talk about it. I've said many times, a lot of the homeless could be everyday people like myself, who went out to Vegas with like 20 grand. And because it's so populated there, I couldn't get a job in time to also get a house there. It's a catch-22, whatever. So blow through the money, ended up homeless, whatever. There's that case. But then there's also people who develop severe psychotic disorders, and unfortunately, they develop something like Capgras syndrome, where they believe that their family members have been taken over and taken over by like an evil force of somehow, and they're trying to kill the psychotic person. And the only way that the psychotic person can save their real family members is by killing them. So if you get to a point of thinking where harming a family member saves them, okay, we're operating on two different realities, right? One is this reality, which we think is true, but no, they're both true. They're both true. And this sounds like a fringe example, but I and many people have dealt with this, and it's terrifying. So what do? You can send them to jail once they attempt to kill you, because if you call before that, they're not committing a crime, right? They're not trespassing, right? So you got to wait until they harm you, and then you can call. And then guess what? Well, they harm you. You can either tell the police or not tell the police. Do you want to keep them psychotic? Probably not. You're going to tell the police. So they press charges. However, in order to get them to a hospital, you're going to have to post bail immediately so they can transport them. I love this brush. And I know this sounds bizarre if you've never experienced it, but this is the truth. Okay. Post bail, $1,600. They go to a hospital. They deny meds. That's their right. They don't have to be forced unless they are violent with the nurse. Okay, they're not violent with the nurse. Now they get let out. And it's a cycle. The parents or the family can lock the doors and tell them you don't live here anymore, but if that person's reality is different than yours. So at a certain point, the cycle continues and people don't want to deal with it anymore, and they abandon the psychotic person because they fear for the whole family. That's one way that somebody is psychotic and on the street. So if that complicated scenario can also play out in many different forms, in many different cultures, just imagine this homelessness issue is very complicated. Very complicated. What about somebody who's psychotic but doesn't have Capgras syndrome, right? They're not violent with anybody. That's a large portion. It's like most of the time they're nonviolent. Do they want to go to a hospital where they get drugged on meds that don't even really get rid of the voices? They only get rid of the good voices, and now you're stuck with just the bad ones? No, I fucking wouldn't want to be on meds. I can acknowledge that. Okay, so they don't go on meds, can't hold a job. Maybe their family dies. Now they're on the street. That's just another example. We have to be able to acknowledge all these different perspectives because they're all true. They all are true. Tori, there can only be one truth. I get that, but all of these experiences are like half-truths or partial truths is a better way to look at it. Okay.
And it's a dangerous situation for everyone, okay? The people who are just trying to go about their day and the person who is left on the streets battling with this untreated mental health issue. There are people who are obviously struggling with drug addiction, and you look at the number of overdose deaths, and it has skyrocketed. The approach that we have implemented is clearly not working. More people are dying. And I get so much flack for saying this. I want an actual solution. It is insanely cruel to watch people die on our streets and then give yourself a pat on the back because you think you did something compassionate. That is not compassionate. You know, there's this insanity right now where, let's say we're talking about.
So, I know that she dealt with a really tragic, like EPAR situation with somebody who was homeless on the street. And so I understand where this frustration, how do we solve it? I can speak from experience that there is no solution to it. You cannot respect somebody's autonomy and also fix these things in some regard. Okay. It's not a fun thing, but because there's so many different solutions, the truth of the matter is the way that we treat mental illness has to change. Because if we get to a point where somebody's actively psychotic, how can they rationally get themselves into treatment? Think about that. That's when we talk about capacity. And most of the time, the denial for treatment, anosognosia, lack of insight, has to do with lack of insight, which is very prevalent in psychotic disorders. So if somebody doesn't think and they know for a fact they are not sick, remember, because it's not like their reality is that I know I'm not sick. Everybody's trying to poison me. I know I'm not sick. It's honestly a symptom of the illness. Okay. So if it's not just denial and they really don't think they're sick, why would they accept treatment? They would have to be forced into treatment in order to get any treatment. Because as long as somebody's psychotic, they can't make a rational decision. And unfortunately, our competency tests are like, do you know your name? Most of them know their fucking name. It's like, yes, no. A better solution, if we even want to get anywhere in this conversation, is maybe doing something collaboratively with the family. I understand there are families that maybe would try to get them into treatment because they're shitty people and they don't want any. I understand that, but it's just an idea. Having family members who live with them have some say on what they witness. So-and-so was drawing all this on the wall. Show them a picture. Can they make a fake thing? Yeah. But I don't think a lot of them would, but it's definitely a way to get somebody into treatment when maybe they can't get themselves anymore. Because waiting until they're a risk to themselves or others is a very gray area. And now they have like a charge on their record when we all knew it was mental illness, right? That's just one consideration into how to get somebody into treatment. I acknowledge that there's many shitty people that will try to lock them up like we're in 1940. I get that. I'm not saying we should adopt just that. It's just like one way to look at it.
About the same person struggling with a severe mental health issue, they're living on the streets, asking them if they are willing to take the housing that's offered to them. But they can, okay, someone who has a severe mental health issue, I know the left would argue if they engaged in some sort of sexual act with someone, the person who engaged in that act with that person with the mental health issue took advantage because that person with a severe mental health issue does not have the ability to consent. But somehow we're just going to take their...
That is a dilemma I haven't even thought about. Hold on, can we just back that up? Okay. Person with mental illness who's like actively psychotic, EPARs somebody. Can you actually get that person in trouble if they weren't mentally there? Can you actually go to the cops and say you were EPAR'd? Whoa. I feel you, girl. I hear you. I see it. I see it. That is a problem. That is a big problem. Big problem. See how there's these cracks in the system that we don't think about? Man, that is a big problem.
Word at face value when it comes to housing. No, we need to get that person help. They need help. And I don't care how vicious people think I am for saying.
How can you prove the mental, though? That's the question. Now you may understand why I get very upset when people say things like, oh, they're doing X, Y, and Z. Be so cautious before you know exactly why somebody does something. Be so cautious. I don't care if they have capacity and it seems obvious. Stop doing that. Not you, Tyrone. Not you, obviously. But like it speaks to me on a core because I know that it might be so obvious to be like, that person is XYZ. But man, it shatters when you watch somebody become psychotic daily. And then the language. We don't have language for a good way on how to fix this. And it's like, what the fuck does that mean? It's like magnets, okay? I'm trying to bring them and they're like repelled. It's like we don't have language. I cannot access the language for it. It's just that I know that it's wrong to think you know why somebody did something. You can have assumptions, but you know what that does? Makes an ass out of you and me, okay? You don't know. You don't know until we can get into somebody's head and be able to track everybody's brain on some big live stream. You don't know. So, I don't know. It's a tricky thing. But when in doubt, compassion, obviously preventative stuff. It'd be easy for me to be like, maybe we should pay more attention to a prodromal phase, but brain is so fragile. You never know. There is a genetic component, but I don't know. Compassion, rehab, you shouldn't have to press charges. But that what they're trying to do is respecting autonomy, right? And they should. But at what cost? Do you respect the autonomy and let the family risk their lives like a domino effect? There is no right answer. This is the trolley problem. And in this country, it's very, you might think it's like, oh, they're a risk to the family. I'll just do this. In this country, we respect a person's rights. So it's the top priority. It doesn't feel like that. I'm sure there's instances where it doesn't feel like that. But I'm talking on the extreme ends of things, they really do. And so if you don't want to be forced into something like electric convulsive therapy, which I don't think anybody would, right? That's like on the other side. We don't want that. It's like, where do we find something in the middle? It's very complicated. Personally, I think it's a spectrum, like one line, and everybody falls. Most people fall in the middle, but there's moments where so many different factors can affect you one day that it can shift you a little bit more psychotic. I don't know that for a fact, but just the way that people pick up news and they assume these radical beliefs without really doing the research leads me to believe that this delusional thinking is a lot more common than we think. It'd be really easy for me to write it off as, well, they have schizoaffective, they have schizophrenia. And it's like, I've seen regular people fall into these delusional patterns. And I think it has to do with language, but I don't know. I'm just a psychic. I'm just kidding. It's like, I don't know, but this is what I feel to be true. And it's like, well, feelings aren't facts. Mine are. Okay. Mine are. I change it. I'm just kidding. It's just things to think about. And then to really assess if you think you make the moral decisions I have a whole video coming out on morality that will better explain this shit. Because right now we're like, I'll do the right thing. And it's like, but what happens when what you think is the right thing, you end up causing more harm in the long run? Like, I would love to see moral dilemmas play out all of the wrong ways it can go wrong. And it's kind of like a roulette game. So if somebody comes on the channel and I walk them through a moral dilemma and then I change it in my head on what the outcome is, how do they react? How do they want to solve it? That's where we need to go in order to fix here. But people are too focused on their lives to really step into these real world problems that we're not really getting to like the hard hitting shit. So empathy, knowledge, it's all useful. But we also like to have fun here. And so we don't go into shit like that all the time. I'm going to end this here. I'll probably be back. I say that now. We can do like a call in, but I want to do a call in on horizontal. I don't like this format. If you agree with some of the things I'm saying, great. Put it in a comment below. If you disagree and hate my guts, put it in the comment below. Like the video. Subscribe if you want. Since I would say that I start a video at 9 every day, but we all know I show up most of the time, but it's not always at 9. So, yeah, okay, I'm leaving. Love you. Bye.